Hello kind people of YouTube and welcome back to another video. Today as always we're going to take a quick look at the crypto markets and then at some news. So let's get right into it by refreshing CoinMarketCap real quick. Today we see the markets slide just a bit after we saw them shoot back up 2-3 days ago. They have not fallen quite to the levels before that spectacular day 2 or 3 days ago, I don't remember the exact date, when the markets gained over 10%. Not all of that is undone, but just about half, with Bitcoin ahead of everything else, falling 6.17%. Briefly fell under $4,000 right now at about $4,050. We will see how long that 4,000 barrier ultimately holds. But today Bitcoin is definitely one of the weakest performers, as seen by its dominance falling to 53.6% from over 54% yesterday. Aside from that, there's not that much to talk about. Pretty much everything is uniformly down, with the surprising exception of Bitcoin Cash SV, which is up 1.6% and has been able to hold steady for the last couple days. Notably, it did not go up in value when the rest of the market shot up, but now when the rest of the markets are falling, it doesn't seem affected either. But aside from that, just not all that much going on in the markets today. Very hard to tell if this is just erasing some of the gains or if this will be more of a permanent thing. The volume is down a tiny bit, but still very high, so expect some more market volatility. People seem a bit unsure about whether we're going up or down right now, so get yourself ready for anything. But let's look at some actual news, and we have some people making pretty critical statements about cryptocurrency that I want to take a look at and maybe take apart a bit. Let's start with this from the Russian economic minister. All these articles of course linked in the description if you want to read them yourself. Bitcoin is a soap bubble. The Minister of Economic Development of Russia referred to Bitcoin as a soap bubble that has led to investors' losses, Russian information agency RBK reported on November 28th. Minister Maxim Oreshkin, I probably mispronounced that, I'm so sorry, speaking in an interview with RBK, noted how the cost of Bitcoin has decreased dramatically, referencing the coin's rise to $20,000 in December of 2017, and his exact quote, "When Bitcoin's price jumped up to 20,000 and now it is lower than 4,000, we said very simple things. Bitcoin itself is a soap bubble, it deflated, that's what happened." However, Oreshkin also said that despite a fair number of losses among investors, cryptocurrencies gave a positive impetus to tech innovation. The minister noted that many investment projects have been created within the industry of new technologies, such as blockchain, which is good for business. So what we have here is it makes for an impressive and negative sounding headline, but I think his actual statement is much more understandable, much less dramatic, because it is a simple fact that the late 2017, early 2018 bull run that we saw was a bubble. We were not at the point where those prices could be adequately supported with the infrastructure that we had built up. There was people FOMOing into the market, putting way too much money into projects that they didn't understand, that shouldn't probably have gone to those values yet, and that popped. So when someone describes that as a bubble, describes Bitcoin as a bubble, and he is specifically talking about that price development to 20,000 and then down to 4. That is simply a bubble. It is one. It was a bubble. Now, it is hard to tell from the statement if he means that Bitcoin is a bubble completely or Bitcoin in the context of that bull run. Because of course Bitcoin was previously worth cents and is now worth $4,000. So if you're looking at the long-term view, the value has gone up dramatically, even with bubbles in between. But I don't want to talk about this part of his statement too much because it's hard to know with a quote, especially since that quote I assume had to be translated. It's hard to tell from this quote if he meant that bull run was a bubble or that Bitcoin completely is a bubble. Even the statement Bitcoin itself is a soap bubble. There are various ways from the very negative to the just neutral to read that. I personally choose to read it in a neutral because after he went on to talk about the potential of cryptocurrency technology and how it positively impacted tech innovation, But honestly, yeah, we did go through a bubble, and it wasn't the first and it won't be the last. That is why these bull runs and the bear runs that we see in the cryptocurrency space are so much bigger than the ones that you typically see in traditional investment. Because right now, those are very much bubbles. Right now, those are not rational. There's a lot of investment flowing in that doesn't have any rhyme or reason, and then people notice and then the prices crash. So yeah, that was a bubble. It was. It deflated. That's what happened. He's just correct here. And I don't think this is quite as negative as some outlets are trying to make this out to be. Now, Russia is pretty strict on cryptocurrencies, even though they are launching their own stablecoin. But this particular statement, I think, is simply true. And I always try to be fair and try to admit when someone who I might disagree with on other things, or who might represent a country or an organization or a group that I disagree with, says something that makes sense. And here we just have to admit that what we saw happening to Bitcoin and to the cryptocurrency space in general in late 2017, early 2018, that was a bubble. That was not properly justified. That was not backed by the kind of infrastructure that we need to be able to justify prices like that. But continuing on, flawed cryptocurrencies will never be a store of value, claims UBS's chief economist. And this is the statement that has much bigger issues. So let's look at this article. It's slightly longer. The global chief economist of Swiss financial giant UBS, Paul Donovan, has reiterated his position that cryptocurrencies have no future. Speaking to business channel CNBC, Donovan said that cryptocurrencies are flawed and will never go mainstream. According to Donovan, from the time Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies started rallying to stratospheric levels towards the end of last year, it should have been obvious to anyone with a high school education in economics that it would end badly. In Donovan's view, the biggest flaw with cryptocurrencies is that they will never become a store of value. And here's his quote: "Every economist knows that a store of value is about balancing supply and demand. But with cryptocurrencies, you cannot control the supply in response to a drop in demand," he told CNBC. And we're going to read the rest of this in a bit, but there's already some massive red flags here. Now, first up, here where he was talking about the bubble that we saw late 2017, he is correct. Anyone with a high school education in economics was able to see that that was a bubble, that it was going to pop. But that's not really the main issue here, because that says nothing about the long-term prospects of cryptocurrency. We have seen bubbles in the past and we have come out of them stronger than ever before. And there's no reason to believe that won't happen this time. But we can tell why his view of the potential of cryptocurrencies and their future is so skewed when we realize that he only seems to understand cryptocurrencies as a potential store of value. And he makes a legitimate argument here that a store of value is about balancing supply and demand. That is why generally fiat currencies are considered a good store of value, because their federal banks are essentially tasked with keeping the value at a certain level of limiting inflation, and for that they print additional or they pull back supply. Like, that is simply true. If you're talking about a traditional store of value, especially if you're looking at fiat currency, you need to have a control of both supply and demand. Or at least be able to control supply in response to demand. And of course, with most cryptocurrencies, with the ones that are either pre-mined or that are being mined at a predictable rate, you cannot control the supply to the same extent because the supply is limited, is capped. Now, of course, there are other ways to think about this, where that capped supply can actually be part of the appeal, of the value. Now, of course, you need a certain demand to keep that up. But there is another argument that you could make here, that the capped supply might be what is causing the demand. If you're looking at other forms of investment, I'm trying to give examples here outside of the crypto world because I'm trying to show that this is not only a crypto thing. If you're looking at art investment, say you are buying a print released by a famous artist and it's limited to 500 signed prints and they're numbered and you have a certificate, so you know there are only these 500. There will never be more. If anything, individual ones might get lost or destroyed along the way. Then part of what gives it that value, of course not the only thing, but that limited supply is a big part of it. If you have 500 prints, or if you have 50,000 prints, will be a large difference in how that item is priced. Now, of course, the demand needs to be there, but that is just an example of how you don't necessarily need to balance the supply to create that demand. Now, of course, art is not generally considered a store of value because art doesn't tend to stay at the same value. It tends to go up over time if an artist remains popular. So it is nobody is trying to keep art at the exact same value. But that is the problem with Donovan's view here. He thinks that cryptocurrency can only exist in the store of value area. And I don't think that is what most cryptocurrencies are trying to be. Like, the idea of Bitcoin as a store of value has kind of become a meme in the last couple months. But I personally don't think it is anywhere close to being an effective store of value, and it likely won't be anytime soon. So I'm personally not of the view that store of value is even one of the core concerns that we should have as cryptocurrency investors. I'm not looking at what will retain its current value. I'm not looking at how we can make sure that something retains the current value. I'm looking at potential future value. For me, these are not stores of value. I'm not trying to keep my money at the same value. I'm trying to make investments that pay dividends in the future. Not necessarily through paying actual literal dividends, but in the metaphorical way in that I will get more money out of it than I put in. So that is the issue with his argument here. He seems to only think in terms of store of value, and I would agree that cryptocurrencies have it tough in becoming a store of value. Stablecoins have a better shot there because there the supply can generally be controlled. I'm not sure about every stablecoin, but at least some of them, the supply can be controlled. And there are some other ways this could be handled. Like some cryptocurrencies like XRP have a certain amount in escrow that could be strategically released at a certain rate to also respond to demand. But in general, I would agree cryptocurrencies have a pretty tough battle ahead if they want to become a store of value, because a store of value is not supposed to be volatile. But now you have to ask yourself, do you care more about something retaining the value it has right now, or about it potentially going up in value? And here he continues, regarding the uses of Bitcoin, the economist noted that they could only achieve widespread adoption in failed states. This was in response to an observation that the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis had put out a white paper suggesting that cryptocurrencies might be useful in countries experiencing widespread corruption and a high devaluation of their fiat currencies. And his quote, "If you don't have a government, then society gets a little bit more anarchic, and in that situation something like cryptocurrency can be useful." The interview was in reaction to a blog post where he titled, "I come to bury Bitcoin, not to praise it." Okay, here, that is again like a half-truth where he's kinda on the right track, but he takes it way too far. Because as it stands, there is a certain use case for cryptocurrencies in failed states, because there they actually function as a store of value. And here you have the same issue again. He's only looking at them as a store of value. The reason that cryptocurrencies are particularly interesting in failed states, or at least one of the core reasons, is that if your fiat currency is going through hyperinflation, you have more stability if you put your money in Bitcoin or XRP or Ethereum or one of the various stablecoins. But once again, only thinking in terms of store of value here, there are many other uses for cryptocurrencies that he isn't even considering. Cryptocurrencies are a way they currently unbanked, and there are billions, to my knowledge, billions of people who do not have a bank account. Cryptocurrencies are a potential way to integrate those in the international banking system. Cryptocurrencies can make international monetary transfers faster, safer, and cheaper. Cryptocurrencies can be used Cryptocurrencies can be used as a part of protest against authoritarian states. Cryptocurrencies can be used to power new technologies. There are so many use cases here that he simply isn't considering. And yes, if you're just talking about the potential of cryptocurrencies as a store of value, then listen to this economist. He doesn't know what he's talking about in that one area. What he doesn't understand is that most cryptocurrencies aren't even trying to become a store of value. Literally only stablecoins make that their explicit goal. Nobody else is really aiming to create stores of value. We have plenty stores of value already. Cryptocurrencies are trying to create something entirely new trying to react to the modern world in a way that traditional finance has not been able to. And there are a million different things that cryptocurrencies are trying to do, and you cannot judge them by being a store of value, because a lot of cryptocurrencies do not want to be a store of value. That is ridiculous. That is like looking at a computer and saying, well, that doesn't cut my hair. It's not trying to cut your hair. Anyway, let's continue to some happier news, and the rest of today's news are happy. Coinbase Pro adds yet another coin. They've been on a roll there, Zcash. Major US cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase has launched support for Zcash on its Coinbase Pro platform, according to a blog post. Zcash is a cryptocurrency based on a decentralized blockchain designed with the goal of making transactions more private than they are in the Bitcoin blockchain. Zcash's View Key option is used to allow some individuals to see private information about users' transactions. View keys may be used for an audit or sharing information without disclosing it publicly. Today's announcement notes that the Coinbase Pro platform will start accepting inbound transfers of Zcash, while deposits will be accepted for at least 12 hours prior to enabling trading. Trading on the Zcash US dollar order book will begin only after sufficient liquidity is established. The exchange notes that Zcash trading will initially be available for Coinbase Pro users located in the US, exception of New York as always, UK, EU, Canada, Singapore and Australia. Coinbase will subsequently add more jurisdictions. Coinbase also stresses that Zcash trading is not yet available on Coinbase.com or their mobile apps, for which the company will make a separate announcement at a later date. So this is the latest coin they're adding. They've added a bunch in the last couple months as part of their initiative to get a lot more coins and tokens on their platform. Now, you might wonder why is Coinbase so important, and I know a lot of you guys do not like Coinbase, and I understand your arguments, I definitely do. But I'm talking about Coinbase here not because I support them, but because they have a real impact on what happens in the crypto world. Coinbase is one of the biggest names, and Coinbase is the first stop a lot of people go to when they try to get into cryptocurrencies. So anytime a coin gets made available on Coinbase, Coinbase Pro is less forward-facing, but Coinbase in particular, and usually Coinbase Pro means it gets put on Coinbase in the next couple of weeks. Anytime that happens, that makes that coin available to a wider audience than before, to a really wide audience who now have it easy buying that coin. And that is really meaningful, as much as we might dislike Coinbase. Coinbase is the point of access for a lot of people, especially in the US, to cryptocurrencies. So anything that is added there, that is really big. And usually it results in the price shooting up significantly, sometimes before crashing down again. But this is the latest, and this will not be the last coin they're adding. And at least for the near future, it will always be newsworthy when they do. Because right now, it is still a relatively limited platform. Coinbase is not a Binance that has hundreds of coins on it, or like a Yobit or something. Coinbase has very limited selection of coins on there, so anything that is added, that has a meaningful impact. And last but not least, TRON announces $100 million blockchain gaming fund. Decentralized Internet Protocol TRON announced its plans to launch a blockchain gaming fund dubbed TRON Arcade in a press release shared with Cointelegraph on November 29th. And that is, of course, supposed to be TRON Arcade, not TRON Arcade. TRON Arcade, which the company says is designed to empower developers, will see investment totaling a giant $100 million over the next 3 years. The move is another long-term commitment from TRON, which acquired file-sharing giant BitTorrent earlier this year. According to CEO Justin Sun, the arcade will play a crucial role in the firm's expanding popularity. And his quote, TRON strives to tackle existing issues faced by the gaming industry by leveraging the open, transparent, and immutability of blockchain technology. TRON Arcade will play a crucial role in encouraging developers to join in our mission and provide the best blockchain gaming experience to users around the world. In line with what has become a common theme in its publicity, TRON highlighted the attributes of its network, such as transaction speed versus those of Ethereum. Sun himself had continued the PR drive prior to the company's announcement, taking to social media this week in an attempt to woo Ethereum developers over to his platform as prices tanked. Now this is very interesting, but I would like to note that we seem to be lacking some details for this right now. But what we know is $100 million over the next 3 years going to be used to empower developers. Here in the quote. Now I don't think we know how exactly that will happen. I don't think we know what exactly that money will be used for, how the developers will be selected. if this will be cut up into many small pieces given to individual developers, or if they will pick a few large projects to fund. Now, 100 million is an awful lot of money, but you also have to keep in mind that game development is becoming more and more expensive. Nowadays, video games cost as much to develop, at least the really big titles, the AAA titles, have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people working on them for weeks, for months or years. They have advertisement campaigns that cost tens of millions, and they have budgets that rival Hollywood movies. And it remains to be seen what this money will be used for. I assume they are going to invest in a lot of smaller scale game titles. Now, smaller scale usually also means smaller audience, but not always. We have seen some notable cases of really low budget games breaking through to a massive mainstream audience in the last couple of years. I believe that is probably what they're aiming for, because I've said it before, TRON and similar protocols live or die by how many people actually end up using software, using dApps built on top of them. And all that TRON needs is one good, well-known app that uses its token that is built on top of its technology to go big, to become famous, to become mainstream. That is all TRON would need to also become a mainstream platform. So I think that is what they're probably aiming for here. Now, there are many interesting applications of blockchain in video games. Those can be from buying in-game collectibles to many different things. So this is definitely interesting. It will be interesting to see what exactly they're funding here. I hope they will be careful in their selection. 100 million in gaming can be wasted really easily if you pick the wrong projects. I hope they select ones that put the integration of their blockchain platform first and foremost, because that is ultimately what they need. Whenever you're looking at a company giving away all this money, there is an ulterior motive, of course. That doesn't mean it's not good that they're giving this fund out, but ultimately they're trying to see A, more development on their platform, B, some positive news about them, which is happening right now. I'm talking about them positively right now. And C, they want those things to result ultimately in more people using their platform, knowing their platform, and buying their token. And for that, they will have to make sure that they invest in quality teams that will produce good software that has mainstream appeal, ideally, that has a chance of making it big, and that uses blockchain and specifically their token in some kind of meaningful way. Because when people play this game, they need to know that it's running on TRON, and they need to be using the TRON token in some way. And if they can make that happen, if with these $100 million over 3 years, if they can fund just one game that achieves that, it will be huge. That will be huge. And I'm very excited to see where TRON is going here. I've been pretty critical of some of the stuff that Justin Sun has said in the past, some of the things he has done in the past. But this fund, to me, seems like a potentially great idea. I always like to see these blockchain platforms really invest in the development of dApps on top of their platforms. I think that is exactly what needs to happen right now. We saw all that money flow into the crypto world 2017, 2018. Now is the time to use that money to build up the infrastructure that we need for mainstream adoption. And video games are a big part of that. Video games are one of the biggest mediums in the world. That is a massive industry that reaches millions, if not billions of people of all age groups, of all genders, of all everything, of all nationalities. Gaming reaches around the world and reaches a lot of people, especially that are younger, that might have some disposable income to invest in it, and that might shape the future. So very interesting, very interesting. I hope they make their choice as well, but I'm still waiting for details on this. And with that, I'm going to end today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you're not subscribed yet, you should change that. If you are subscribed and you really like my videos, there are ways to support me in the description. In the description, you will also find all the links to these articles, as well as my social media links. Thanks for watching.